welcome back to another episode of Let's Chat Reality. I'm Molly,
I'm Michael.
and today we're excited to be covering Survivor and Real Housewives, both in episode 8 for both those seasons. So let's just get started. This episode for Survivor was a wild one. So we've got a lot to talk about, all that happened there. So first we see right after coming back from Tribal from last week that Saul tells Rachel that he gave her the advantage, that gave her that power to just walk out, safety without power advantage there. And Rachel was obviously very appreciative towards Saul, and she basically said to him, like, oh, I knew it was you. So do you think that they will remain loyal to each other throughout the season?
I think for now, yeah. I think, once it gets down to like 5 or 6, who knows? I think it's kind of everyone's game at that point. But I definitely think something like that is for Rachel such a sign like, oh my God, I can actually trust this person. Like through their actions, they have proven to me that they did something that they did not have to do because it did not really benefit his game at all. Because at that point, like, they weren't super close. Like this was something that, in the future, I'm sure he hoped like, okay, if I do this for her, like hopefully she'll return the favor at some point and she'll have my back. But really he didn't know that. She could be the type of player that doesn't think of that type of stuff. Like, it's just what's best for me in this moment, whether, somebody had done something for me in the past or not. I'm going to look out for my own game. And she still certainly could do that. But from what she has said, both, by in her confessionals and to Saul directly, it really does seem like she's taking that and appreciates it and is going to look out for him now. So I think absolutely for the next few weeks, they're going to be locked in as a duo.
Yeah, and it also seems that no one's even really asking like who gave that advantage on and the rest of the cast now because like Saul's like, well, I'm gonna keep this a secret, but we haven't even seen anyone be like, oh, who used that? Like, who was it? Like, only at Tribal itself, it looked like that. So I think that's also like gonna be their secret that they can keep, and like no one's gonna really question it. I guess at this point, there's so many other things going on that I don't think they even think that at this
Yeah.
moment. So that's also gonna be helpful for them, I think, moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. It really does seem like nobody cares all that much about it. And that's great for Saul. Because otherwise, if people did, and, it could be one of those things where people are like, if they find out it was Saul, they could be like, well, why didn't he tell me? I thought he trusted me. And now he kept a secret from me. Why did he do that? So that could play out in the future, but I kind of feel like after a couple weeks, it's going to be a moot point. I just think people will kind of forget about it and move on. So I think it seems like he really got away scot free with that.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll see how that plays out the rest of the season, if anything. And then this episode, we also got the auction, which is exciting to see that they brought it back. And they kept it this new format that we also saw from season 45. So they had to go and find the money in those scrolls, and then however much they got was how much they could use to bid on items. And there was a certain amount of items that were going to be auctioned off, but they didn't know that number. So those are some of the changes there. But do you like overall this new auction format, how they kept it from 45?
I like most of it. Yeah. I think there's certain parts that I could do without, I guess. Like, I think everybody's starting off with a different amount. I think the problem with it for me is that I feel like when everybody has the same amount to start off, there was something interesting with that in the first couple of rounds when most people were even, because you would see, I feel like, a lot more of these kind of like bidding wars because everybody had the same amount. So nobody could just be like, they would have, in order
800.
to
Yeah.
automatically get it, they would have to say the highest amount. Where like
Yeah.
right now, someone like Sierra comes in with so much more than half the other people, and she could, you know, just bid half her amount and nobody else has a chance. So I think that's the potential for a problem with it. I still think this was great and super entertaining, but I feel like in the future there could be a situation where this becomes very boring because, 2 or 3 people just get all the money, and then, someone like Andy who didn't have anything. There could be multiple people like that, or there could be multiple people who purposely do that because they don't want to lose their vote. And so they purposely just won't look for anything. And so that could it would kind of be hilarious, but like that could kind of be a problem where it wouldn't be super entertaining because you could get 5 people who just decide not to look and get any money.
Yeah. No, it was funny was seeing Andy looking and then walking straight past the ones
I
that he was going by.
know. Poor guy. That's so
Yeah,
Andy though. Like that
I
just
know.
felt so perfect that he just walked right past it. That just
I know, it really did. But were there any favorite items you had from the auction?
ooh. I really liked the whole breakfast. I think that would be what I would want. Whatever they called it, like the Survivor, Sunrise, Breakfast Extravaganza, whatever they called it. I was like, ooh, that looked really good. Um, I kind of there was like an interesting idea I thought with the whole like three people bid on the chance to win something, and then they had to
Mhm.
eat the little snail or whatever it was. Ugh. Which I hate eating challenges, so that was not super appealing for me. But there was something interesting there. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the fact that they got to keep the money if they decided not to go through with it. Like Sierra decided that she didn't want to do it after bidding, and then she went back, but she still had her money, which I guess is a disadvantage in a way because you're not get lowering your total, so you have the potential to still be at the top and lose your vote. But on the other hand, then she still got to bid on more. So I
Yeah,
don't
I was
know how I feel
surprised
about
about
that.
that. Yeah.
But what
Yeah, I
did
was
you think?
surprised to see that money aspect getting back into her pot. 'Cause I would have thought, like, once she bid, like, you can't take that back.
Hmm.
But yeah, I did like that aspect to it, but I think it could have been done a little bit better,
There's
for
potential
future
there, yeah, like, I think for
yeah,
something interesting in the future, I think if they just kinda tweak it a little bit, I think that that idea has potential, even though at that point, it's not an auction, but, you know, it works, it's still entertaining.
yeah.
What were your favorite items?
Um, well, I feel like just anything, like, with the protein, so I think the
Mm.
chicken wings I would've
Oh,
wanted
yeah, with
there.
Kyle, what
Oh,
did you
oh,
think
that was
about
yeah, that was
that?
interesting 'cause Kyle, the only one who's vegetarian on this season,
Yeah.
got chicken.
What did you
Um,
think about the fact that he decided to b break his vegetarianism in order to eat and get some protein?
I mean, it was smart. Like, if he didn't eat it, I would've been mad. Like, I would've been like, "Okay,
Yeah.
what are you doing there? Like, you need to be eating that chicken." But it was crazy. It's funny to think that, like, out of everyone, like, he was the one who bid on it and had to eat it, like, because it
Mhm.
was a secret to he didn't know what it was, obviously, so, I was like, "Did the producers, like, edge him to that?" Like, I was like, "I hope they didn't, because that would've been
I
crazy if,
that
like,
would
they
be
yeah,
really
that would be bad.
crappy, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that if I were in that situation and I like, it's just, like, morally, like, you just, like, don't wanna eat it, but, like, in that
Mhm.
situation, like, you're kind of in a really sticky situation there, like, you're not getting food
Yeah.
and you need some substance, like, I would've eaten it there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what I would have done because I'm not a vegetarian, not a vegan, so, like, I don't know if my morals told me one thing. I just don't know in a situation like that when you're for the last 2, 3 weeks haven't barely eaten anything and you're so hungry. And I don't know. I think there's, like, something slightly about it that feels a little icky that they didn't, like, have an option, like, "Okay, if Kyle gets this item that's a meat, let's have this as a backup for him so that he can not have to make that choice." But, I
Yeah.
mean, I guess in this situation where it's like, he could have bid on something that wasn't hidden.
Mhm.
Earlier on, the first few items weren't hidden, so he knew that he would have been bidding on something that he could have partaken in. So, I mean, I guess there was that option, but he could have been outbid. I don't know. I think if I were a producer there, I would have a little bit of a hard time with that situation, and I'm not sure what to do. But he decided to break it, so that was his choice. So
Yeah. Yeah, I know, it's interesting, I wonder if he's gonna talk about that, like, post-season interviews, if we see anything
I hope
of
so.
him he talks about regarding eating the chicken.
I'd be interested to
But
hear that.
that
Yeah.
was definitely an interesting moment for sure.
Hmm.
And then well, we see now the immunity at challenge comes up next, and Sue and Kyle win immunity. They chose one female and one male to win that. And Kyle kind of looked a little bit sad he was winning again because he realizes how big of a threat that makes him, having won his third immunity challenge, individual immunity challenge. So that is definitely going to put a target on his back now. And Sue was just really happy because she never thought she would win anything. So that was a really heartfelt moment
That
there. So
was
it's
so
kind of a
funny to me.
contrast of the opinions there. It's like, well, Sue was like thrilled. Kyle's like, oh my gosh, no.
That
But
was
what
so
are your
funny to me with Sue because you could tell she wanted to say, like, her, like, actual age there, like, "I can't believe I'm doing this at my age," but then she was like,
yeah.
"No, everyone thinks I'm 45. I can't be that, like, that happy about winning as a 45-year-old," but, that was funny, but, yeah, I think, we see this on Big Brother, we see this on Survivor, where if you win too many in a row, people start to look at you and think, gotta get you out because I want a chance to win. And if you're there, I'm not going to have as good of a chance to win. So, I mean, look, we saw this with Tucker on Big Brother just this past summer. So, I'm interested to see if Kyle will end up suffering a similar fate.
Yeah, I almost thought he was gonna drop. Like I was like, I think he should like not purposely, but like kind of purposely drop
Yeah.
there because like I didn't want him to win it to be a target because I do like seeing him in the show. So I'm like, I don't want him to feel like like I don't know. I just thought obviously you want to try to win and he's not gonna give up, but now for his game it's not beneficial, most likely. But
Yeah,
we'll
it
have
would
to
be
see.
interesting to see like if Kyle had been vulnerable there, whether or not the Gata and Lavo alliance against Tuku would have maybe been more likely to stick together because they would have had an option that was a really big threat in getting out
Mhm.
Kyle. Whereas when he's immune, he's not an option there. Sue's not an option. They, decide to look a different way. But I would have been interested to see if he had been vulnerable and what would have happened.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point and brings up our next topic of talking about Gata and Lavo going originally thinking that we thought going to this they had an alliance to go against Tuku, but then things shift, which sounds like the editing makes it seem like Andy really brought up this idea of trying to
Mhm.
go after Gata instead, so having Lavo and Tuku work together because obviously Andy's part of Gata and trying to go against his own people because he's like, well, I don't like them. They don't like me and they're trying to control me. So I should just get them out. So honestly, great move for him. So, but overall, like, do you think that Lavo should have gone with, or who do you think it should have gone with there, either to stay with Gata or to stay with, or to go with Tuku in that vote?
I think given who was available to vote out, yeah, I think that a lot of them probably made the right choice because Gata had the bigger names, the bigger threats. And I do think that they made the right move there for sure to team up with Tuku and get out Gata, especially the fact that they have Andy ready and willing to turn on his own people and join up with them. So I do think that they ended up making the right choice there to target Gata. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that like breaking up duos obviously is really impactful too.
Mhm.
So the fact that Sierra and Sam were so strong and working together and seeming to be very confident, and when that happens then people are very skeptical of like, okay, like they think that they're all that, like they can't really run this game, like
Yeah.
we need to get them out. So I think it was definitely the right move and obviously really smart on Andy to flip. And then hopefully, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen moving forward for his game, if people are going to think he's disloyal or what's going to really happen there. But what are your thoughts on how moving forward is going to be for Andy?
Yeah, I don't know because look, he's probably on the bottom with all the Gata or all the Lavo that have been together since the beginning, all the Tuku that have been together since the beginning, and if the rest of Gata are taken out one by one and Andy's left standing there, then he's the last one left who doesn't have that pre-merge history with anyone else. And so I think he certainly that's something for him to think about, but I don't blame him for breaking with the rest of Gata because they didn't appreciate him. It was very clear, I mean, based on at least what we saw, that Sierra and Sam in particular were basically just thinking he's a number for them. He's expendable. He's not a threat. He's, just not playing. And they were just going to drag him to the end because they felt like he was blindly loyal to them. And little did they know that behind the scenes, Andy's telling everybody that he's willing to jump ship, and they're more than willing to to bring him in as a number, of course. But so I do think that it's possible that they could see him doing that, and if they don't realize the reasoning behind it, that they could say, "Oh, well, if he did that to them, he could do it to me." And that's not somebody that I want in my inner circle, and for now it's fine, but as the numbers get smaller, that's somebody who I would be more likely to get out earlier. But I do think that, we saw Sierra talking to Caroline and kind of talking about how, oh, Andy's just, always having a hard day and whatever. So someone like Caroline probably does realize why Andy would jump ship. She kind of knows what Sierra has been saying to her about him, and I'm sure others do as well. But it's possible that if they don't, then they could kind of see that as Andy jumping ship just because he feel like it'll put him in a better position.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like there also are those cracks in those other tribes too that Andy's going to help be a number in some regard in the future. I think that someone else is going to want to flip and make a big move. Andy's going to be there to help in that way. So I think it will end up being more beneficial, in my opinion, than it will be detrimental for his game, just
Mhm.
due to the fact that merge, you never know what's going to happen. And no one always has to stay tribe strong unless they truly want to. And it seems like not everyone likes everyone on their tribe, so we'll have to see what will happen in the future with that. But definitely made for an interesting episode seeing that Andy flipped here. So then that kind of left it up to between Rachel, Sierra, and Sam. Rachel was feeling unsure, so she decided to play her shot in the dark, but not the idol she found. So that was interesting because she had received an idol that she got from receiving a clue that was hidden in her fries. So she was like eating her fries and was like, "Oh, paper." Um, so
Oh
got
my
an
god,
idol.
knowing me, I would have eaten it. I would have, like, taken a bite and been like, "That's an interesting tasting fry. It needs ketchup."
I know. It was funny. And then she was like, "Oh, everyone's so excited to see other." Who was it getting at that moment? Whoever was getting at that moment was like everyone was like excited, so she grabbed the paper, like no one noticed, which
Yeah.
was also good for her.
That was
But it was interesting that she only wanted to use her shot in the dark there and not like for sure safety by using an idol. So why do you think that she chose that instead of over the idol in that moment?
So I actually think that this was genius.
Yeah.
And I didn't really realize it right in the moment what she was doing, but then it hit me later on that when she said, "Oh, Jeff, I'm going to pull something out," I just assumed, "Oh, she's using her idol." And then when she did her shot in the dark, I realized later that what she was doing was she didn't know which one she was going to pick when she first called Jeff. And then she looked around to see how everybody reacted. And then she
Mhm.
could see if she thought she actually was in danger or not. So then when she kind of thought, like, okay, I think I'm good, I don't think I got the votes, then she just decided to do her shot in the dark. And she could have, even after playing her shot in the dark, she could have continued to kind of look to see how people were reacting and then played her idol right afterwards if she needed to. But she didn't have to do that because I don't think she got the sense that she was the one in danger there. So then she just wasted something that, isn't that big of an advantage anyways. And she got to keep her idol. So this was a great Rachel episode, I think, just in general. Like,
Yeah, I agree. And I think I actually did notice it in the episode while I was watching how she was looking around at everyone's
hmm
thoughts when she decided to play the shot in the dark. Like right when she played it, like I was thinking that if people were like, "Oh my gosh, no way," like then she would have pulled out her idol there. But
hmm
because she felt that she was like, "Okay, like I don't think I got these votes, like I won't use my idol," was so smart on her part
yeah.
there because it really was just her reading the room in that sense. Like it was just like, oh, is this gonna be me or is it not? And she obviously was the right chose the right thing there.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
No,
I'm
that was
excited to
smart. I think
see.
that this is the first episode where I was like, I could see Rachel making it pretty far here.
Mhm.
That I could see her in the end game at this point, and now she has an idol. So, she has we're at final 10, and she has an idol to hopefully not get wasted.
Yes, exactly. Well, then it ends up being a tie with Sierra and Sam having the most votes. So then they have to do a revote, but Sam's not able to vote in that because he lost his vote by having the most amount of money left in the auction. So that was an interesting side of it that Sierra was able to vote, but Sam wasn't. And ended up being that Sierra gets voted out in that revote. So, do you think that that was the right move, or who do you think that target should have been if it wasn't Sierra?
Well, first of all, it was really interesting to me that Sierra was able to vote in the revote. I
Yeah.
think that's a rule change from
Mhm.
previous seasons, because and the rules have changed throughout the years with this revote. Like in the past, I won't go through all the different versions of it, but we've seen various different versions of it, and I, it was interesting because in the past we've seen like a 2-2-2 split, and all three of the ones who were tied didn't get to vote, even though they
Yeah.
could have had votes. Like, like they had options there, so it wasn't just an obvious vote for each other. So that's definitely a new thing, but sure. I mean, I guess it really doesn't matter. At least in this case, it didn't matter. But yeah, I at first I was confused a little bit because I really thought it was gonna be Sam,
Mhm.
and I think Sam and Sierra both thought it was gonna be Sam too. But I can see why it was Sierra, because I think Sierra is the one who's probably closest to both Sam and Rachel. And so without Sierra there as that kind of connector between the two of them, I don't know how close Sam and Rachel are just without Sierra there. So I do see why they would have thought, okay, getting out Sierra kind of makes the rest of the, well, I guess if you consider Andy to be part of the three, but Sam and Rachel at least just kind of not, that alliance kind of crumble a little bit. So I can see
Mhm.
it. I think that Sam's probably the bigger immunity threat in the future, but it seems like with Kyle there, maybe it doesn't matter. So we'll see. But I can see why they chose Sierra.
Yeah, I think so too. And it was interesting starting off in the tribal when they were like, "Oh, well, whoever gets voted out here is a big threat. Like, we think you're playing a great game." Sarah was like, "Oh, you guys think I'm a great threat? I'm honored." Like when she was leaving, so it kind of became full circle in that moment. Like, yeah, like she was really had a good alliance that like with Sam, of course, but then also was close with Rachel and kind of had those relationships there. That I think that it was smart to get Sierra out in this episode. So she's the first member of the jury, which is exciting. Crazy that we're already at jury.
Yeah.
But we'll have to keep updated every week, of course. We'll talk about it next week as well. But let us know your thoughts if you're listening. We're curious to hear about your thoughts on Survivor this season too. But now let's get into Real Housewives of Salt Lake City.
Yes. All right. So, starting off the episode, we see Heather meet up with Meredith and Lisa, and she retells the story of her argument with Bronwyn that we saw at the end of the last episode. And it's kind of interesting because I think Heather and Bronwyn have very different recollections of what happened during this argument. So, what did you think of Heather's retelling to Meredith and Lisa? Did you think that it was accurate, and or were there parts that maybe she left out to kind of make herself look good and Bronwyn look worse?
Yeah, I think anytime there's a retelling of a story, you have to take that with a grain of salt because you're gonna be biased in trying to make yourself look better in that, like in a general sense, like not just with Heather, but like any kind of retelling of any kind of story you're involved in that's not favorable towards you, especially, you're not gonna want it to be like, oh, well, like this is really what happened here. So I think I mean it makes sense that she told it in the way she did, but obviously wasn't totally truthful.
Yeah, like there wasn't anything where I was like, "Oh, that's like egregiously false." I mean, to a certain extent, they both know it's on camera. So there's
Yeah.
only so much they can get away with. I mean, I guess they can make the season easier for themselves by leaving certain things out that maybe when it airs, will make them catch some heat. But for the most part, like it's on camera. Like they have to know that at some point they can't just like completely make up things. So I don't think there was anything like that crazy, but I do think that where Heather was like, "Oh, I don't even Bronwyn didn't even explain to me what I was apologizing for." Like, yeah, she did. She
Yeah.
did, and I think that that's a little bit disingenuous to say, but yeah, I mean, like, I think if I were to hear that story, if I was Meredith and Lisa, I would probably take Heather's side too, just from hearing that one side. But
Yeah.
then when they end up getting to Palm Springs, Bronwyn is also talking with Meredith and Lisa, without Heather there, of course, because Heather did not join them on this trip. And she becomes a little bit upset with Meredith and Lisa for seemingly taking Heather's side and not really being willing to listen to Bronwyn's side. So, what did you think of that? Do you think Bronwyn has a right to be upset with them, or are Meredith and Lisa being good friends to Heather, who they've obviously known longer, by taking up for Heather in this moment?
Yeah, I felt bad for Bronwyn there just because it didn't seem like Meredith and Lisa were trying to hear her out at all there and just being friends to Heather over her, which I mean, it does make sense since they have been friends for longer. But I think in this scenario, like Bronwyn was sharing her side and like her feelings towards everything. And they're very valid points that she's making and she's very articulate in the way she words things. I'm like so impressed by her, honestly. I'm like, wow, like her the way she expresses things and like she's so calm, like it's great, I love her. But and I think that obviously like it's not an ideal situation and it's also her home that she invited them to, like they should be more respectful towards her and understanding like where she comes is coming from, and it felt like Meredith and Lisa just weren't open to that.
Yeah, I think that if I were Bronwyn, I think I would not be so upset with Meredith because they didn't know each other before this show. Like Meredith has known Heather for, what, at least 5, 6 years now that they've been on the show. She's known Lisa though from before the show. Now I don't know exactly how close they were, whether this is kind of being exaggerated for the show. That happens sometimes with new housewives when they come in as somebody's friend and they don't really know them. They maybe just met like a couple months ago because they knew that they were being considered for the show. So producers were like, "Here, go out to lunch with so and so, get to know them, let us know if you think they'd be good on the show. We want them to, make some friends before so that when they come on, there's an organic connection there." So I don't know exactly what this situation is, but it does seem like they've at least been running in some of the same circles for a little while. And so I think if I were Bronwyn, I would probably be upset with Lisa for bringing me into this show, supposed to be kind of like, at least for a season, eventually, yeah, they'll probably have a falling out, but like, at least for a season, at least for the first half of the season, like, have my back to some degree.
Yeah.
So I can completely understand why Bronwyn would be upset with Lisa. Now, if I'm putting myself in Lisa's shoes here, though, I do think that Bronwyn also, to kind of turn that around, when I bring somebody onto the show, I also would maybe have a little bit of an expectation that they're not going to just turn on me within 6 episodes. Like they're going to at least like be my friend or for a little bit here. Like I am the one who brought you in, supposedly in quotes. So like I can understand on both sides. I think how there's hurt there, and I think that they both kind of feel the same way about each other.
Yeah, for sure.
So Meredith, we see when they get to Palm Springs, is upset when Seth, her husband, comes up to her when she's having sitting by the pool with Lisa and John, and Seth tells Meredith that he's going to have to leave the trip early for a work trip. And Meredith becomes pretty upset with that because this is where they've had issues in the past where Seth is just traveling all the time. They don't get to spend time together, and Seth had agreed to come on this trip. He knew it was going to be an overnight trip and he had no issues with that. And then suddenly, when they get there, all of a sudden now something comes up and he has to leave early. So do you think that Meredith is justified in being upset here? Or do you think that this is a sign that maybe there's more trouble to come in their marriage, or is this something that they can work through and be fine?
Yeah, I definitely think Meredith is very justified in that. Seth is seeming to be just prioritizing all of his work stuff over Meredith, and that's obviously not a great feeling for her. And especially if he had already committed to going, and then midway through, not even midway, like pretty much a few hours in, being like, "Okay, I'm gonna leave." Like that's not good, because just shows that he doesn't truly care. If he did care, he would have stayed. So I mean, of course, work obligations happen, and like seems to be pretty high up in whatever he's doing. So like obviously, like that's a significant part of his life, but I think he needs to realize like how to better like prioritize multiple things in his life so that he's not just leaving Meredith hanging all the time.
Yeah, I agree. I think that look, this is also work. They're
Yeah.
on a cast trip for the show. Like they're making money by being here also. And so I think that Meredith is probably like, okay, why are you prioritize like this is obviously something super last minute that has just come up. I feel like you could easily say, look, I'm filming right now. I'll be back tomorrow. Can we, whatever this is, can we push it one day? Like, and I don't know, maybe it's something that he can't push. I don't remember exactly if he gave more details on what it was that he was having to travel for exactly,
I don't think
but
he did, but he had to get to Ohio, which, like, he was, like,
yeah.
complaining about all the traveling that involved, but, like, you know that by taking a job in Ohio.
Right. Like I just think that they, whatever it is, they can't just expect that he's going to drop everything that day and get there. Like I think there has to be some sort of wiggle room where he can be like, okay, I can do this, but can't leave until tomorrow. So that he can at least be on the trip for the whole time, or at least like, maybe they have to leave like an hour or two early. I'm sure that's fine. But like it's a one night thing. Like this isn't
Yeah.
like a 3-4 day trip where he's, leaving after 2 days and at least has been there for a good amount of time. Like he just got there. So I don't know. I do think that he seems to not be prioritizing this, which is Meredith's job primarily. And I'm sure there's a level to it where Meredith is like, well, this is my job. And, yes, you're supporting me by being here, but then on the other hand, as soon as you get here, you have to leave. So I can absolutely see why Meredith would be upset with that. I would be frustrated too, I think, if I were her.
Yeah, me
But
too.
we then get a scene of Lisa and John and Whitney and Justin all talking about who owes who an apology based on their arguments that John and Justin had and that Lisa and Whitney have had. Now we hear that Lisa thinks that John owes her an apology, or sorry, that Justin owes her an apology, and Whitney thinks that Lisa owes Justin an apology. And Whitney and Justin have talked, and they don't think that they owe anyone an apology. So, who do you think owes who an apology between the four of them? Does anyone owe anyone an apology? Does everyone owe everyone an apology? What do we think at this point in order to kind of get things settled to move on? Who owes who an apology?
I think the path of least resistance is getting Justin to apologize to Lisa, which I don't know if that's what's necessary. Like, I think that it's everyone's fault in this scenario. And, like, I think Lisa should also be apologizing. Whitney should also be apologizing. But, like, overall, like, I feel like if Justin were to apologize, they could move forward better than if any other scenario were to happen. Because I think that's going to be harder to get any of those other scenarios, anyone apologizing
Mhm.
from that. So that's my opinion on it. I don't know. Like, I just feel like it's still gonna be going on throughout the season. So I don't know if we're ever gonna get an apology. But overall, those are my just initial thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think that everyone just at this point needs to apologize to everyone.
Yeah.
Like, I think let's just I think that this is something that they will never agree on. clearly Lisa and Whitney. I think John and Justin will be fine. Like
Yeah.
the husbands, they'll be fine. Lisa and Whitney, I think just they're never going to agree on this. I think that Lisa at this point, Whitney just needs to agree to disagree. Like, yes, Adam told Whitney that, clearly from what we can tell now. This is interesting. So Adam, who's the podcaster who basically Whitney was talking to, that confirmed without confirming that it was Lisa that gave the information about Alibaba. And Adam is saying that the episode was edited in a way that made him sound like he was saying that it was Lisa, but then actually he was answering a different question, and the editing was tricky, that he actually did not confirm anything. And Whitney is now, claiming it as fact that he did. But he's saying that the way the episode was edited was misleading in that degree. So I don't know. I don't know what is true. I don't think we'll ever know. Maybe at the reunion they'll show some sort of like raw footage. I don't know. But from what we can tell, it does seem like, based on what we're watching, which is all that I can go off of, it does sound like he confirmed it. So I think that Whitney just basically needs to say to Lisa, like, hey, I believe you if you're this passionate about the fact that you didn't do it. I believe you. I was told a different story that made me think that, it had to be you. But if you're saying it's not, fine.
Yeah.
And I think that Lisa would probably, she might not want to be best friends with Whitney still, but I think that she would take that and at least move on at this point. So I think this is where we get tripped up, where it's like, we have to be able to move on. These women, and they will. Salt Lake City is known for, like, every season, the relationships and friendships are completely different than what they were the year before. So I think they will move on, but I don't want this to become Jersey, where it's just like, we can't, things get so dark and so deep that there's no moving on from it, and the show just has to like be rebooted or canceled. So I think that's the trick to these shows, is just being able to blow out, fight, and then move forward. So I hope we can get to that point, whatever it takes.
Yes, I hope so too.
Well, as they all the girls are sitting by the pool, Bronwyn goes up for a minute to go, I guess, to the bathroom or something like that. And while she's away, Lisa FaceTimes Heather, who's not on the trip, as we mentioned. And everybody's saying hi to Heather. Heather's asking how things are going, blah, blah, blah. And then while they're still talking to her, Bronwyn comes back and sees that Heather is on FaceTime, and she gets pretty upset about this. So, do you think that Lisa was wrong for FaceTiming Heather in that moment? Do you think that that was intentional and she wanted Bronwyn to see it? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't think that was nice of Lisa to do that. I think she obviously was close to Heather and wanted to FaceTime her because she's not there. But Bronwyn had explicitly asked her not to before in the day, I believe, right? Like she didn't want her calling, Lisa didn't want her calling Heather. Because I think she mentioned that already, that she was like, oh, I want to. And then Bronwyn said no. So she obviously knew Bronwyn didn't want that. Like, and maybe it was a different story if Lisa were to call and like not understand Bronwyn's feelings towards that. But Bronwyn made that clear
Hmm.
that she didn't want her talking to Heather while on this trip. So obviously, because she's not there. But obviously made for some good TV in the end of it. So it's like I didn't want that to happen. I feel bad for Bronwyn that she had to witness that, but also now we got some more drama. So we can't be so mad about it all the time.
Yeah, I think this is just something that Lisa could have done in her room. That's
Yeah.
like in the morning or something. Like when Bronwyn's not going to come in and see it, give Heather that little camera time so that she can get paid for this episode. Well, she was already in the episode, but I guess they didn't know if she was going to be or not. So, I mean, I honestly think that that was probably something that Heather said, can you please FaceTime me so that I can at least be in the episode, for one little moment? Because very easily they could have edited this in a way that the episode started in Palm Springs, not starting with the Heather Meredith Lisa scene, and then Heather's not in the episode, and they get paid by the episode. So I could see that that would be the reason why she would do that. And that could have been intentional on Lisa's part to do it in a point where it's a big group scene, more likely that something's going to happen, while Heather's on the phone, or would have become a bigger
Mhm.
thing, and then they can't cut it out of the episode. So that could have been very intentional on Lisa's part. I don't know. But in terms of just being a good friend to Bronwyn, yeah, I think do that when, you're in your room and Bronwyn's not going to possibly come back while you're on FaceTime and see it. And then it starts a whole argument between Lisa and Bronwyn.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
yeah. Well, to end the episode, Bronwyn's husband, Todd, comes in while Bronwyn and Whitney are talking. And Whitney gives them a moment. And Todd basically tells Bronwyn that he doesn't want any drama on this trip. There's too much yelling, too much drama. I don't know what show he thinks he's on, but he's like, I told you I don't want any drama on this trip. Like, okay, then you want Bronwyn to be on a show that gets canceled.
Yeah.
So Todd goes up to John, Lisa's husband, and tells him that basically Lisa either needs to cut it out or leave. So, what did you think about that? Do you think Todd was out of line for saying that, or did he have a right to draw a line in the sand there?
Yeah, I agree that Todd does not know what show he's on if he's saying that, because that's what Real Housewives do, is that they argue, and that's part of the show. So the fact that he's trying to make this ultimatum, like, didn't really sit right with me. It's like, it's like it's okay. Like there can be fighting and it can be processed and like maybe not the yelling part, but like there might be some arguments and things that like have to come up in any kind of scenario. Like you're all in a house together. Like there's gonna be something that comes up. So I didn't like that. But I mean it get made for some good TV that were like, okay, Todd, sit on your high horse, but like that's not gonna happen. Like, like I actually don't know. I mean, we got to be continued of what's going to happen, of if she's going to leave or not, and I doubt it. Like I don't think she's going to leave. I think that's going to make maybe even more drama because then Todd will be like, "Oh my gosh, I told you that if you're still yelling and you're arguing, like you need to leave, and now you're still here." That's just my opinion of it. I don't know if that's actually true, but
It's a good
um,
guess, yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. I feel like she's definitely going to stay and just things will be okay, but or for the most part, hopefully. And I don't know. It's interesting because Todd's also like not even a main person in the show. Like I don't think he has that authority. I mean, it is his house, but like I don't see it happening that she would leave.
Yeah, no, 100%. I don't think so. Especially because we're already missing Heather and Brittany from this trip.
Yeah,
That and Mary. So I
yeah,
think if we weren't already missing three main cast members, then maybe I could believe that Heather would be asked to leave. That they would have allowed him to, I guess, go through with that. But because we're already missing so many of them on this trip, I don't think that they're going to risk losing another one just because the husband of a brand new housewife doesn't want drama. Like that feels like nothing so bad happened. It wasn't like anything got physical.
yeah.
Like nothing so bad happened that she should be sent home. So I just don't think that producers will allow that to happen by any means. But yeah, I mean, I think that I could see how Todd, he's supporting his wife, I guess, so I appreciate that as a husband. I think that he's good for supporting his wife in that way, but I think that it's going a bit too far. Like, I think that he could have sat John down and just said, like, "Hey, I don't like some of the stuff that your wife said to my wife. I don't appreciate that. I think that she owes her an apology,
Mhm.
whatever." But like to just go up to him and say, "Just cut the drama or you're gone," like that's a little too far, I think, for the position that he's in. So we'll
Yeah.
see what happens after this to be continued. But for now, that is the end of this episode. So we will certainly be back next week for more Survivor, more Salt Lake City, maybe another show if I can't even think of anything that maybe comes on next week. So we will catch you all next week with whatever we're talking about. So
Yeah.
thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to follow us at Let's Chat Reality and on social media. and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. So we will chat with you guys next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.